Hello, Nicole. Hello, Brianne. I feel glad that we're meeting for this purpose. We're going to talk about what the village looks like. And my first question is about your research that you've been doing for I don't know how many years, that you called Awakening the Village. You've offered TED Talks about it. And I would like to hear, what have you learned from your research? What have you discovered? What were you researching in the first place? And where this name came from, Awakening the Village.
Oh, there's so much I could say about all of it. The name came when I was homeless. After my marriage ended, I didn't have a way to, make good money in the setup of society, because I'd been a mother for almost 20 years by then. Well, been a mother a long time, 21 years by then. And that had been what I was devoted to. And I became a mother too young to establish a career or get a great education that then I could kind of hold up as evidence that I could do a job that was worth paying me a lot for. And I had also, as a single mom and as a married mom, I had just become so resourceful. I could stretch. I could come up with what we needed, and without money. And so I was less scared of that than maybe the average person. And I was homeless, and I had a computer, and I was doing this. I had already been dreaming about this possibility of a village that was low tech and super connected, wild humans, really using not very much manufactured stuff to create a life for ourselves. And my brother, he roasts coffee, and he told me that there was this guy in Calgary who had his own cafe. It wasn't like a Starbucks or a Tim Hortons. And he was serving my brother's coffee. And I was like, I need a cafe to go plug in my computer, do this communicating I'm doing, trying to, in the very early stages of figuring out how I was going to make a life for myself. And so I went to the cafe, met the guy, we got along really well. We actually became partners for a while. He's a generous man with a lot of clarity and a lot of, he could see that I wasn't some kind of crazy failure. He agreed that I was out there, Mm-hmm. And he invited me to use the cafe however much I wanted, after hours, to gather with people. Mm-hmm. And so I started doing that, and I called it Awakening Cafe. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a play on coffee, coffee wakes you up, and we're gonna wake up, we're gonna get enlivened and alivened and awakened, through being together and comparing notes and figuring out how to do it. So Awakening Cafe happened every Sunday for 2.5 years. Oh, and I made a group on Facebook, Awakening Cafe. And then that kind of evolved, and I created Awakening House Temporary Permaculture Ashram as a place to live. So going from homelessness to sharing a home and working that out. And I knew that it was an experimental next step of the microcosm of the village to come. And I could see this possibility that if enough people lived simply together, working out how to do the human part, working out how to do more of the permaculture part too, even in the city, that eventually maybe we could all kind of sell off these houses, except for one that could be the urban satellite. It would be the opposite of having a cabin at the lake. That we would have the village at the lake and the cabin in town, like the place in town that we could come to if like to get resources that are more available in the city, and also to bring the resources of the village to inspire and connect and empower urban dwellers.
Yeah.
And then partway into Awakening Cafe kind of died off, partly because I had a place to do things. Yeah. And partly because then the cafe owner, Calvin, who's also the owner of this building, he sold the cafe. So then it went into, and then I wasn't doing Awakening Cafes anymore. I was doing Awakening the Village. So I changed the group name on the Facebook group, and it turned into Awakening the Village.
Where did it come from? Just all of a sudden you're like, this is village.
Yeah, it had always been about village. Growing up as I was a single mom for 10 years, living, I used to say, so far under the poverty line. I thought the poverty line was the sky. It was like, oh, if I could only live at the poverty line. And it just, that phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. Like, gosh, I wonder how many times it played in my head. I'm thinking like 73 billion or something.
Yeah.
Just because I'd be on my own trying to be a whole village to a little boy and then two little boys. And, you know, I finally got married. I finally got one person added to my village. And in the context of a kind of sort of wider village, because I was part of a meditation and healing and yogic community. And that was very much in my effort to get the healing I knew I needed so that I could be empowered as a mother to just do this all in a way that worked better.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was really, like, I was on the verge of breakdown a lot of the time. And I didn't have people that I could just call and be like, hey, will you take the boys? Will you come and spend the day with us? Will you do these things? Or if I did have those people, I didn't know how to ask for that. I looked at the world and everyone was busy working their jobs or working with their own family, other mothers also on the verge of breakdown, and we could only spend so much time together before it started contaging to the kids and then to us overtly, and then so it was like I lived on eggshells.
Yeah.
Except in my own little home where me and my boys we were just really real. And you know, when they had tantrums, I was like, yeah, I hear you. It wasn't like that early on because I was still very scared of them having feelings. I thought if they had feelings, I was doing something wrong. And then I read a book called The Aware Baby.
The Aware.
Yeah. And it was all about how maybe all these feelings and all these expressions of feelings that come out of us need to come out of us, just like poo and pee and snot and earwax need to come out of us. Our sweat needs to come out of us. Maybe this is just another version of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that works for me. Because I notice that when I do let it out, something's different. It changes. And sometimes maybe it's just like a pressure release valve and then the pressure builds up again. But I noticed that like in these increments, like I was learning, I was changing, like how I saw the world was changing and how I thought about it and how I engaged with it. And it made a difference to my kids. Mm. So I wanted more of that. And that's a real uphill battle in the context of modern culture.
Yeah, and I had a question about, like, so a lot of the research you're doing now is about motherhood and modern culture and kind of shifting to a different kind of paradigm. And I wonder what you envision motherhood would look like in next culture, in a village. Like, what would it look like to have a family, raise a family? Like, to interact with the kids, like how would the community come together to have children?
You know what? I used to have so many more sure answers about that. Oh, it would be like this, it would be like that, it would be like this. The more of my own transformational work that I do in myself, for myself, with myself, and then with other people who are really doing it, like you, like all the possibility managers that we've been training with, the more I'm like, the more I kind of go, that way I thought it would be, maybe it wouldn't be like that. Because I've had this kind of ideological like fantasy of, that maybe it would be like, oh, it depends how the parents are getting along, whether they live together, and then the children would be connected to the people that were there for its birth, and the people who come and go. And I watch kids who I know now, and I watch them with this lens of possibility, and I see how they are, and I see how they're each so different.
Yeah.
And then I see how their relationship with their mother is each so different, and yet there are these common things that maybe just come from being having animals of a kind, right? And then I think about how I thought it would go in regard to the relationship between the village and modern culture, and I saw that as more connected than I do now. Like now I see something so completely like an evolved version of an eco-village as more of like a Gaian game world that maybe the people of this entirely different culture maybe visit modern culture cities or modern culture eco-villages where really they're still in so many ways doing things according to hierarchical like old thoughtware, old maps, like how we talk about in possibility management, there are so many old and new maps. And then there are in each of the skill development areas, like each of the evolutionary, becoming different areas, there's the phase 1 of doing it and phase 2 of doing it. And I think that I was dreaming up the kind of phase 1 eco-village.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to just be like, whoa, what about when we're in phase 2 actually? And phase 1 is never over. We're always going deeper. And it's the possibilities that I see, especially when I think of because a lot of my first version of an eco-village, it had a lot of indigenous kind of stuff. Like I almost thought, there had to be kind of a shared religion or shared spirituality or something. And I didn't know what mine would be because I don't really have a religion. I don't really have a joke that I practice Nicoleism. It's my own unique version of how I relate to, all the different levels of reality and the powers that be.
Yeah.
And so using the tools and skills, distinctions, maps, processes of possibility management has really shifted me into really into the unknown about this. Like I have a few experiments I want to try for sure. And I think the only experiment, the next experiment would be to get together with a bunch of possibility managers, because we use the same tools and skills to do this deeper transformational personal work and work out how it can be.
Yeah.
And so to do that on some land where we spend at least part of our time doing the hands-on, feet on the ground, figuring out how to build things, and we learn how to actually build a village, a physical village to live in and to eat from, where there's all of the food is being, we're figuring out how to do that.
Yeah.
Without with as little as possible resources from modern culture, and the personal part, the part that breaks down so far everything I've ever seen try to be built. Like,
the collaboration, the connection, and the co-creation process.
Yeah, like what I've noticed is that even in the very successful kind of examples of eco-villages and intentional communities, it's like they get to a plateau where the evolution kind of like levels off. And I just see that this other something, this other like this curve is continue upable. And I want to experiment.
Yeah, I've been pondering this, like what would it actually look like? And the more I do like thought experiments about it and like dream about it, the more I come to this point where it's like it would be so different every time.
Yeah.
Every place would be so different according to the land, according to the people. People might choose to live in nuclear families, like 2 people with their children only, and maybe people would choose to live 20 people in one dwelling, and maybe people would choose to all live like it would be so different according to the people.
Yeah.
Because being like anchored in radical responsibility, everyone is creating from their own authority and creating what they want themselves, which is so unique.
Yeah. And then with the feedback culture, it's all about what worked, what didn't work so well, and what we could try next. Like, where might that take us?
Yeah.
Like when we're actually doing it. And we're actually like, bring on the feedback.
It's like, it's neutral and there's no like, oh, I'm a bad person because of this feedback.
Yeah. And if that does happen, we have all the emotional healing processes so that it can happen next time. Because that's what doesn't work so well. And how, like, the experiences I've had so far, that has been it. That has been the part that I got blocked at. Like, I blocked myself at, where I didn't, and I was doing amazing work on my own, learning how to hold space for myself to go into breakdown without taking all of me into breakdown. I was able to keep a part of myself as my own space holder.
Yeah.
So I grew that part of myself. And then the part of myself that kept going into breakdown would become a little more grown up and a little more responsible. And I did so much by myself, and every now and then found someone else who could kind of hold space. And then I was teaching other people to hold space and I didn't even realize at the time that it was because I wanted them to hold space for me and find out how to do this stuff. And then, lo and behold, possibility managers have been doing it for, since I was 5 years old.
Wow.
And all of the distinctions and tools and processes that had been discovered by possibility managers suddenly were at my disposal. And I was like, put those in my tool belt. And I just started going into actual full breakdown with space holders so that I could kind of hit into those old, like bedrock forming choices that I'd unconsciously made and actually come up with like a whole new version of myself that didn't have that thing that had always been there so long.
And you've been sharing about this conscious choice, like research or that you were writing that you've been doing. How would this appear in next culture? Like, how is this part of creating your own culture?
Oh, that's such a great question. Well, I've just seen how in a relationship, even in an inner relationship, where one of my main questions I ask myself is, what am I not aware of right now? What am I not conscious of? What am I choosing unconsciously here? What is my unconscious purpose in doing what I'm doing? And then as soon as I'm asking that question, I'm looking, and the unconscious starts to become conscious. So it's this, and to me, that's what awakening is about. That's what evolution is about. And that's the basis of responsibility. Mm-hmm. How can I be responsible if part of me is like not even aware of itself?
Yeah.
And when I have people around me who are like, what about that? And it's not like, it's like, what about it? Like, I think I see something, and I'm like, what? Tell me, so that I can know, so that I can become aware of that part of myself that I can't see, that I'm not using, that is choosing for me in a way that I don't mean it to be, like according to what my bright purpose and my bright principles and my sense of how I want it to go, what would work for me. So it's the crux of it for me. Yeah. Is this awareness and conscious. And for so much of my life, people would say to me, "Well, you chose," and I'd be like, and I of course I chose to some degree, but then there was this other stuff that was happening that wasn't. It's like I chose this because I thought I was choosing this, but I see now, hindsight's 2020, how I also was kind of like ignoring this, but then I just also, there was stuff I didn't see.
Yeah.
And so to be in a culture where this is good news,
yeah,
to be like, oh, now I get it, oh, thank you, instead of bad news, it's like, you did it wrong, you're bad. It's like, and I just try to hide more and like work it out all by myself. That's what didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to know what is one vision or one way that you see it could be possible if you were part of a village and you were co-creating it, like what would you want out of it? Like how would your version of it be? And of course, there's other influences because you're going to be co-creating with other people. And I'm really curious, like how is it personal to you?
Yeah, and I used to do in a project I had for a while called Project Salvage, which was seed a living village. And it was a salvage project because, we're using like hopefully cleaning up some of the garbage of modern culture to put to good use, and kind of like salving our souls, or healing ourselves, and this was a big part of it was to find our vision so that we had more clarity about to compare not it to it, and I have I still, some of it's relevant, some of it's still what I see, this kind of, like I see that I might live in this like a tiny home version of a little personal castle, instead of two of the people and all their servants living in a big castle. Like, we each live in our little castle, and some of us live together for a little while anyway. See how that goes. If it goes well, we stay living together. And I just had this sense that I would want my personal sanctuary, just a bed, my clothes, a place to make myself some tea or breakfast, and a herb garden and a fruit garden because I love berries.
Yeah.
I envisioned it like an outdoor shower where the heat from the sun heat up this black, and like somehow water gets up there. I'll figure that out. And then like rinse off. I don't use soap. I haven't for however many 10, 12 years. So it would just be like make gray water the garden after I'd gone for like a run around the perimeter closest to me to check like the natural fence, like in case it's in Canada and there's like wolves and bears, and we want them to be safe on the other side of the fence, and we want, and so there'd be this little sanctuary, and then there'd be the heart and hearth of the village, which is like a community hall where there'd be like an industrial kitchen, and this is my higher tech version, now it's kind of like cob ovens and some wooden tables and shelter, and I mean, how much of it could be not industrial because we don't have to follow any security standards, public safety and all, because we're radically responsible for our own safety and for having it clean and having it work.
Yeah.
And then so the food preparation area, like the big meal preparation area, the food processing area too, like whatever gardening stuff, drying things, preserving them, and then a place where there were tables and chairs, or places on the floor where people could sit together and eat together, and then like a raised platform, like a stage where it was like high drama could happen, including like, okay, you guys have something going on up there, let's help you out, let's work this out, let's turn it from low drama into high drama, and we will watch you evolve before our eyes.
Wow, that would be amazing.
And then I have this vision that everyone would have like a kind of poster on the wall or a section of the wall where they kind of like
their profile.
Yeah, their Facebook profile, where it's like, here's what's up for me, here's how you can get a hold of me, here's, like messages for people that I've been in touch with, because who knows, like, what if the grid goes down and there's no more Wi-Fi, there's no more cell phones, there's no more, I don't want to be relying on that. I'm cool with that. Yeah. I'm not quite ready for it yet.
Yeah.
And I don't want those minerals to be mined out of the earth. I'm just not up for that. Yeah. I don't even want solar panels.
Yeah.
I don't want the earth I don't want future generations, I don't want the earth to have the cost and the mess that is created when I decide that I want solar power. I mean, there's a lot of other ways to get the sun's incredible, people are like, nuclear energy. I'm like, yeah, we got a nuclear reactor. It's in the sky.
Yeah.
Let's figure it out from there, in a way that doesn't cost. Yeah. So there's that. And then it's just food forests all around. Maybe some earth ships where there's like greenhouse going on, and again, like capturing the warmth, so that we don't have to create heat out of earth fuels, fossil fuels. We've got it from the sun, and the sun warms us up, and we can magnify and amplify that by some glass. Yep. Who knows what else?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, indigenous cultures did it without glass. Yeah. Like they did it without all kinds of things that we've mined
and there would be so much of those things ready for recycling.
Yes.
There's so many of those materials that are just thrown away.
Yeah. And that's a part that, like, this whole salvage, like, one of my archetypal, like, identities is to take garbage and turn it into something beautiful, usable, like that you want to have around. Because some of the garbage we've created is not going to it's going to be here for a long, long time. So if we can use it as it is, instead of it being, like, littering the oceans, the rivers, wild plastic bags hung in trees, like, I just want to put all that to good use, like to really use it as a transition, kind of use it as a tool for transition to when we don't need them anymore and there are none left.
Yeah.
Like, wow, how long would that take? A long time.
Yeah.
Really humans have our work cut out for us to clean up this mess.
Yeah.
I feel scared we don't have time. And I use my fear to do it anyway.
I feel scared about that too.
Thanks for asking about my research and the possibilities I see. I love that you're doing this. Can't wait to watch all interviews, everybody.
Yeah. I wonder what a day in the life of the village would look like.
I mean, I would wake up somewhere. Yeah, probably in my little sanctuary, which might be like in a nest I set up under some tree by a river one night. And like I'm pretty sure I'd get thirsty and hungry. So I'm pretty sure that, there wouldn't, I don't know how tolerant to the natural elements I'll be. I mean, I'm getting older every day. So I'll probably get dressed and go to where the people are and be like, what you got today? Kind of do a mage assembly like we've been doing. Like, with maybe whoever I run into first, or maybe whoever I have the impulse to go find. Yeah. Based on what happened yesterday, there'll be continuity.
Yeah.
And then be like, what are we going to create today? Where are we at in our experiments, our projects? And what's next? And I imagine the kids coming around and being like, what are you doing today? What are you doing today? It's like, and if I'm like, well, I'm still working on that thing, they're like, can I help you? I'm like, you can. And you will learn the kids will learn by doing it with us and by just kind of following us, following the grown-ups, following each other, following the other kids. Like, I mean, I just love when the 5-year-olds are the ones taking care of the 2-year-olds and showing them like, this is sorrel, you can eat this, Don't eat that though. Yeah. It gives you a tummy ache. And the little one's like, oh, whatever you say. It's like, none of this,
Yeah, there's no like top-down kind of education.
Yeah, it's like a trickle down. It's like, yeah, it goes from the people who already know, who found out first, to the people who are finding out. And it's such a organic thing. It's not a superiority inferiority thing. In fact, we should like want other people to gain the benefit of what we found out.
Yeah.
Doesn't make me better. Doesn't make me more right or good. And it can just all be like aliveness happening, learning, evolving, sharing, village, team, family. Brilliance. Winning for everyone, including Earth, including future generations, especially Earth and future generations. I'm not leaving places better than I found them. And I feel sad about all the ways that I unconsciously, and the possibilities were limited for sure because how the context was limited that I grew up in. And I feel really scared and glad to be on the edge, empowered with others, creating possibilities and experiments. Yeah, and then, the sun would eventually set and I'd probably get tired, go to bed. Yeah, just kind of coming together to share food and then coming together in different formations, kind of like all the different things, like everyone's little outward, inward tides kind of mixing and melding. And then when there was like something needed, like some, who knows, like what it was like, in however long a time when our last something that we had from modern culture like broke down or stopped working, we can't manufacture another one. It's like, okay, now what?
Yeah,
it would be like these problems, these amazing problems that we get to all be together to like watch how the next possibilities are created and experimented with, and figuring out what works now, what's next, what now.
And it seems like there would be no need for like jobs or like money if everyone is working together to build the shelter that they need and to grow the food that is needed or hunt the food, then
yeah. And yet I kind of imagine that like as a person who's worked with very little money in my life, what I did have was treasure. I had books. I had these amazing books. I had these beautiful little like trinkets, belongings, like, and as often as possible, I would have things that had practical use too. So it was like this. The richness was in my life, was in my other belongings, not just my numbers in the bank account or the money in my pocket. And I get this sense that there's something, like I sense something in me that's about beauty and about richness, like enrichment and like natural power, not power over, and it's not a competition. And it's like, let's empower each other. Let's like evolve the richness, evolve the abundance, evolve the creativity so that, and when it's not about survival anymore, and when it's not even unconsciously about survival, because this is what I think is happening, this is what my life has been since I've been grown up, is that I'm still in survival mode. And it's not conscious. I'm like, no, I'm not trying to survive, I'm surviving. I'm trying to thrive. And it's like I couldn't thrive because I was actually unconsciously still using survival strategies. And they weren't working. And that was my work, was to figure out how to find something that did work. And it worked.
Here you are.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to share about this that is burning to come out, or for you to explore? Maybe that you've never said before about this.
Wow. I've said this before, but I still have this, like longing to show what's possible even in all the different climates. I haven't said that actually, because I've had it as I want to show what's possible in Canada where there's harsh winters. And how that came out differently was like show it in all the different climates. Resourcefulness has been this evolving in development, like I said, like an archetypal kind of like impulse or interest that I've had to show what can be done, even in this barren wasteland, even where there are these extreme temperatures, even where, oh my gosh, I went through a big phase where I was reading about people circumnavigating the globe in sailboats and how they would get their water out of the air. It's like, wow, you can even get water out of the air. And so, I want to see it happening everywhere. I want to be part of it happening in more than one place. And I've always had that. And I honestly, I just don't know how it's going to be possible in villages that don't have the kinds of distinctions and tools, energetic tools, and processes, and like organic social technologies that possibility management has discovered. And so I want to be someone who takes those and brings that treasure. It's like I come with like a couple days worth of clothes on my back, and I have this treasure. It's like, take it, use it, have it. Find out what happens when our unconscious gets to be part of creating purpose, rather than being undermined, rather than undermining our conscious purpose. And there are so many more ways that was happening for me than I ever realized before possibility management started to kind of say, check this out, try it for yourself. And I started being like, whoa, okay, that explains a lot. want people to know that's all there for them to take. Take.
Yeah, wow. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm so glad about this project.
We'll hear more about it.
Go, Brianne!
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next version of what would the village look like.